Shalom, my brothers and sisters. Good morning and good evening to you all around the world. King Saul was a jealous man, and he was jealous of David, who would one day become the king. Saul, several occasions, tried to kill David, and in each case was thwarted. By the grace of God, David was saved, but Saul would still constantly try to pursue him. Tonight we're going to be reading about the actions that Saul committed against David. And we're going to touch a little bit about how jealousy can lead to so much turmoil in the spirit, right? How it can bring your spirit man to a place that you don't need to be in. Let's read about that.
Chapter 18. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day, and would let him go no more home to his father's house. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him, and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and to his bow, and to his girdle. And David went out whithersoever Saul sent him, and behaved himself wisely. And Saul set him over the men of war, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. And it came to pass, as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the women came out of all cities of Israel, singing and dancing, to meet King Saul with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music. And the women answered one another as they played, and said, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him, and he said, They have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom?
This was the first indication of Saul's jealousy right here. Saul did not like the fact that the women of the land were singing praise of the young man, David. Remember, Saul is the tall man, right? He was the one who became the first king of Israel. He was the one who led Israel to many famous battles. But in later years, Saul wasn't as highly praised. Now, once you think about this, he could have very well led the fight against Goliath. But why didn't he do it? It took a young shepherd boy to lead that fight and ultimately defeat the giant Goliath. Now, because of this, all right, we have a new hero. And the people began to take notice of the young hotshot kid. And Saul was like, all right, well, let's bring this new superstar into my fold, into my family, right? Let's put him over my army and stuff. And then he came back, and the women said, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Well, right there, because someone gave greater praise to the king, David received more greater praise than the king ever did. Because of that, Saul was enraged. Women should be praising me, he would think, not David.
And Saul eyed David from that day and forward. And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand as at other times. And there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. And Saul was afraid of David, because the Lord was with him, and was departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from him, and made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Wherefore, when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, because he went out and came in before them. And
I want you to think about it. It says in verse 14, David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Saul feared this because David was humble. He understood how to act in front of the people and how to act in front of the king. Why was Saul afraid of him, though? Because it says when Saul saw that David behaved himself wisely, that put fear into Saul. All of Israel and all of Judah loved David, and Saul saw that. He was afraid of David because the people loved him greatly. So much so that Saul tried to kill David with his own javelin. So now Saul's going to have the philosophy of keep your friends close and your enemies closer. The next step is to give David a challenge, and if David meets the challenge, well, he gets to come in and be Saul's son-in-law. That's the next part of this story.
Saul said to David, Behold my elder daughter Merab, her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me, and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, Let not mine hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. And David said unto Saul, Who am I? And what is my life, or my father's family in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king?
Again, David is humble. David is honored that he would be considered someone worthy to be married into the king's household, right? But in Saul's heart, Saul feared David greatly, so he thought to himself, maybe the Philistines could kill David in battle some way. But God was with David. God had anointed David to be king over all of Israel. And Saul was afraid. And I think that was the problem with Saul, ultimately. When you read on in Saul's story, he did things out of fear. Fear ultimately was what destroyed him and his kingdom.
But it came to pass at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel the Maholathite to wife. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David. And they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. And Saul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, Thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the one of the twain. And Saul commanded his servants, saying, Commune with David secretly, and say, Behold, the king hath delight in thee, and all his servants love thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servants spake those words in the ears of David. And David said, Seemeth it to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man, and lightly esteemed? And the servants of Saul told him, saying, On this manner spake David. And Saul said, Thus shall ye say to David, The king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired.
Saul was using the power of his political prestige. He wanted to clout over David and clout his authority over him. Saul wanted to let it be known that, hey, I am the king, I am the boss. do these things for me, and you will be my son-in-law. He's like, I will make you an offer you can't refuse, right? But yet Saul in all reality was not the master of Israel anymore. God was going to take that authority away. And he had already taken the authority away from Saul. God said to Samuel, the kingdom shall go to another, right? But Saul, still in his mind, was the godfather, the ruler. Only as a puppet, right? God was grooming David and training David to rule and reign over Israel. And God was using Saul as that training. Saul didn't even realize it.
Wherefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew of the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tale to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal his daughter to wife. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet the more afraid of David. And Saul became David's enemy continually. Then the princes of the Philistines went forth, and it came to pass after they went forth, that David behaved himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was much set by. Chapter 19.
Chapter 19.
And Saul spake to Jonathan his son, and to all his servants, that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan told David, saying, Saul my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself until the morning, and abide in a secret place, and hide thyself. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee. And what I see, that I will tell thee. And Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee word very good. For he did put his life in his hand, and slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. Thou sawest it, and didst rejoice. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood, to slay David without a cause? And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan. And Saul sware, As the Lord liveth, he shall not be slain. And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan showed him all those things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence, as in times past.
There's an interesting case about Saul. You could make the argument that Saul suffered from some sort of schizophrenia. On the one hand, he would seem very calm. He was definitely a troubled man, because it took David's harp music to comfort him when he was tormented by evil spirits, right? And there were times when Saul would literally take a javelin in his hand and try to kill David. Because of the jealousy, he could not control his anger. Because he couldn't control his anger and his rage over David, he would try to kill him. And that would set a precedent of being unstable, and the kingdom suffered greatly because of Saul's instability. That's why ultimately in the end, when David became king, stability reigned in Israel. When David had fully secured the kingdom of Israel, and there was no other rebellions, no other risings of any other of Saul's children, David brought stability to the kingdom.
And there was war again. And David went out and fought with the Philistines, and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled from him. And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, as he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand. And David played with his hand. And Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin. But he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall. And David fled and escaped that night. Saul also sent messengers unto David's house, to watch him, and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, If thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image, and laid it in the bed, and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster, and covered it with a cloth. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, He is sick. And Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, Bring him up to me in the bed, that I may slay him. And when the messengers were come in, behold, there was an image in the bed, with a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster. And Saul said unto Michal, Why hast thou deceived me so, and sent away mine enemy, that he is escaped?
It's a funny joke there. David was literally the goat. Ha ha ha.
And Michal answered Saul, He said unto me, Let me go. Why should I kill thee? So David fled and escaped, and came to Samuel to Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and dwelt in Naioth. And it was told Saul, saying, Behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they prophesied also. Then went he also to Ramah, and came to a great well that is in Secu. And he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And one said, Behold, they be at Naioth in Ramah. And he went thither to Naioth in Ramah. And the Spirit of God was upon him also. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. And he stripped off his clothes also, and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Wherefore they say, Is Saul also among the prophets?
Is Saul one of the prophets? It's an interesting verse. I dived into it in a previous video, this particular story about Saul, and how when he was close to the prophets, he would then, in turn, prophesy the word of God. It's quite interesting. If you ever get a chance, check it out. I'll leave a link up here about this story. But back to David and the jealousy of Saul. Saul, very unstable man, we know. And David had to run away. David played it safe throughout his entire career under the king's court, and David learned a lot under the king's court of Saul. He learned about the backstabbing politics and how vicious it could be when you are king of Israel. If David had not this knowledge in his later years, he could have had a very short reign, obviously. The last video we talked about David was the story of Absalom, right? And Absalom was scheming to try to take over the kingdom, and he was using all of his political sway to try to get the people to be on his side. Well, you see, David understood politics and the sway of the people loving you, and David knew he had to do certain things and make certain moves to ensure that he would have stability in the kingdom and that he would be the one to reign until his death. And if he hadn't learned that under Saul's court, he learned a lot under the court of Saul. And that helped David a lot. That helped him a lot. Ultimately, at the end of the story, we know that Saul tried to kill David again. And David ultimately started to gather a following of a certain amount of soldiers. And in the end, they went into the land of the Philistines and helped out the Philistines in some raids and things like that. In the end, David became king, and Saul, because of his fear and jealousy, that's how he lost his kingdom. Now let's read this proverb here real quick. This is a good one. It says in Proverbs 27, starting in verse 1, says, "Well, do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth." Amen. Don't boast about tomorrow, because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Never boast. Let another man praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger and not your own lips. That's right. Don't go tooting your own horn about the things that you do. If someone's going to toot the horn about you, it better be them. Let them praise you, right? And not just someone you know. Don't have someone that you know that says, "Hey, yeah." But if it's a stranger, think about it. A stranger that praises you, that says a lot. A stone is heavy and a sand is weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than both of them. Wrath is cruel and anger is torrent. But who is able to stand before jealousy? And this is the perfect case of Saul right here. Saul had wrath and he was cruel. His anger. You know, he was in torment because of the spirit that had left him. When the Spirit of God had left Saul and cut off from him, that's when he became an enraged man, a man that was jealous. Because who is able to stand before jealousy when he showed his jealousy and tried to murder David? You could tell the kingdom of Israel was unstable. Open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed. That's why in your kingdom, no matter what you rule in, no matter what your domain is, right? It's better to be openly rebuked and have stable and sound advice than to be loved and praised. It's better to receive constructive criticism, I will say, because you learn a lot. And you know, the people praised David, but in Saul's jealousy, Saul's jealousy showed that David had to play it very, very smart, because the criticism Saul had for David was just enraged jealousy. Jealousy, like you think you're some hot young kid. Well, David didn't, or at least tried not to play like the hot young kid that can do no wrong. He played it humble and played everything safe according to what God would want for him to be. Verse 7 says this. Let's go up to verse 6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Oh, that's powerful. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. You know, David tried to come to Saul many times and say, "Hey, I'm not trying to kill you. Why are you trying to kill me? I'm trying to help you." But the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Yeah. Those that would whisper into Saul's ear and try to confirm the lies and say that, yeah, David's a bad person. You should kill David. The kisses of an enemy are deceitful. So in this, we need to learn how to control our anger and our rage, and control our tongue, control our heart, have our heart focused on doing what's right. Remember, I spoke on in a previous video giving godly counsel, godly wisdom. Yeah, we need to be giving godly counsel and godly wisdom, but not for the sake of boosting your own self, right? It says, do your work as unto the Lord. Amen. And that's what we need to be doing. David did his work for Saul as unto the Lord because David respected the kingship of Israel, respected the authority of the king of Israel. David was not Saul's enemy. He tried in every which way to help Saul, even though Saul tried to kill him. David forgave him. My son, be wise and make my heart glad, that I may answer him who reproaches me. A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself. The simple pass on and are punished. David was a prudent man, and he foresaw the evil that Saul was trying to do to him. Jonathan warned David many times, go, run, hide somewhere. And he hides himself from evil. Saul's a tragic case of anger and calamity, and anger and bitterness and jealousy. David is the redemption story of how a king of Israel should be. Because, I know we talked about the Absalom a little bit. David had every right to be jealous of Absalom. But David wasn't jealous of Absalom. Absalom tried to do many things to take away the kingdom from David. David had love in his heart for his son. Love is the key. Without love and wisdom, we are nothing. And I'll just leave it on that. God bless you, my brothers and sisters.